Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Yes.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. Today, we will be speaking about transformers. This is a workshop organized by the Synaptics Club to give you more knowledge about this amazing transformer architecture. Our aim here is to introduce you to this deep learning model, which revolutionized the way data was processed. We will begin. We will begin by first talking about the uh, about its predecessors, the theory of transformers, and then finally we'll end with explaining the code of a working model of a transformer. We hope you enjoy it, and we are sure that you'll learn a lot from this workshop. So basically, first I'll be starting with the pre-transformer era, which is basically what came before transformers. So why did we come to use transformers? What was the need for them? And what were the problems we faced with the models that came before transformers? So this is the itinerary for the first section, which is neural networks, RNNs, LSTMs, and then attention model. So neural networks are basically a collection of neurons, as you can see on the in the image. So basically, if we were to use them for natural language processing, what we would do is pass each word input as an input neuron in the input layer. And you can see there are n input neurons, and then we can pass them to the feed forward neural network and then get the output in the output layer. However, a glaring issue with this model is that what happens when the input sentences are of different sizes. So you will have to change the number of neurons in the input layer every time the sentence length changes. Other questions that we can ask are, does the model capture relations between different words of the sentence? And is the model able to focus on important parts of the sentence? So the answer to these questions is no, because the model is not sophisticated enough to do so. Next, we have sequence to sequence models, which mostly are known as recurrent neural networks or RNNs. So in RNNs, what we do is pass each word separately, and the resultant sequence generated by the RNN is then passed into a decoder. So basically, we first pass the input words sequentially, and then we generate an encoder vector, which then is passed through the decoder to get generate the output sequence. So this is a GIF which shows how the RNN works. So input is passed one by one, you get the context, and then you pass it through the output decoder. So basically, these are the nitty-gritty details about the model, which basically we pass the word vectors, which in the hidden state is generated at each step, which are these boxes. These boxes are the hidden states, and the output of the encoder is known as the context vector, which is C. And finally, this C is passed through the decoder to get the output vector. So this is a video. The inputs are passed sequentially. You get a context vector which goes through the decoder, and then you get an output vector. So the problem with RNNs is that it cannot handle long-term dependencies, which is basically if for example, if the third output here is dependent on the first input here, it is not able to handle these dependencies well. Also, it cannot focus on relevant parts of the sentence. And the third problem is if new information comes in and changes are made without considering whether the change is really beneficial or not. The change is just made blatantly. So now LSTMs. So LSTMs basically make small modifications to how the information is handled using a concept known as gates, which is that there are three gates used in the LSTM model: input gate, forget gate, and output gate. These gates are basically fancy words we used for the vectors that we multiply with our cell state in order to decide how the information in the LSTM should change. So basically, in layman's terms, these are basically three states, the three vectors that we use to decide what information we should keep, forget, and pass on to the next layer. So this is a bit intimidating image, but you don't have to worry about this because this is not a workshop about LSTMs, but this is basically how LSTMs work. And the three gates you can see: forget, input, and output gates. So the problem with LSTMs is basically even after doing all of that scary stuff over here, the same problem still persists. When sentences are too long, LSTMs still don't do well. This means that when the sentences are too long, the model often forgets the content of distant positions in the sequence. Now that just makes me more eager to see what transformers will bring to the table. Now these are the overview of the issues we saw. Vanishing gradient is what basically means that the model forgets information. Also, since inputs are passed sequentially and not parallelly, the runtime increases by a huge amount, and also basically it fails to make use of parallelization. And the last problem is inability to focus on relevant parts of the sequence. Now, to solve the problem of focusing on the relevant parts, we introduce a concept known as attention. So instead of encoding the whole sentence in one single hidden state, so as we saw over here, there was one hidden encoder vector which represented the entire input. So instead of doing that, what we do is the hidden states that are calculated at each step of the input are passed, all of them are passed to each step of the output. And then the model can decide which parts of the input sentence to focus on when making a prediction. So this graphic over here will help you understand what attention really is. So when translating the word je in French to English, the the model focuses on the word I. So the relation between je and I is the highest. As you can see, the intensity of the orange color is highest. While translating the word suis, the model pays attention or to the words am and I, as you can see from the colors. And while translating the word étudiant, it focuses on the word student mostly and a bit on the word a. So this is how translation works. So this addresses one of our problems, that is focusing on varying relevant parts of the input sentence when predicting different parts of the output sentence, which was not handled either by the LSTMs nor by the RNNs. So this is how attention model works. Every hidden state is passed to every stage of the output state. So basically we can find out relations between different parts of the input sentence. Now Ashutosh will be explaining to you the advent of transformers.
Hello guys. I am Ashutosh Nayak and I will continue from here. Meher has talked about the precursors to transformers and the various models and techniques that people use for various tasks before we were introduced to transformers by this paper called Attention is All You Need, which was published by a team of machine learning engineers from Google. Before we get started, the question arises, why do we need to learn about transformers and use transformers if we already had these perfectly good techniques working fine and being used not commonly by the people involved in machine learning? Well, in truth, for small batches of inputs, these techniques were actually perfectly good. But since these methods were mostly sequential and recurrent in nature, the time taken would increase several fold if we use these techniques to work upon large batches of data at a time. And this created a need for an architecture or a model that could be quick and accurate for tasks such as language processing, translation, etc. And this need was met by this aforementioned paper, which introduced and described the beautiful architecture of transformers to the machine learning industry. And without further ado, let's get started. Uh, this was the structure of the transformer that was first mentioned in that paper, Attention is All You Need. As you can see, this seems very complex, but like we can easily tackle this by looking over each of these elements one by one. So let's do exactly that. Uh, Firstly, you can use a transformer for almost any NLP related task, whether it be translation, whether it be classification, so on. But for explanation purposes, today we are considering a translation transformer. So let us consider that we are to translate the English sentence "the quick brown fox" into German, which should be translated as "der schnell braun Fuchs," or if that's how you pronounce it. So this is a very basic overview of what a transformer would do. So in a translation transformer, the data flow can be represented as such. There should be two stacks, one of encoders and one of decoders. Uh, and each stack should contain six of encoders or six decoders. Again, I say six because this is the number that was used in that paper, which I have mentioned twice by now. But today, people do use more than six. That obviously depends on your computation power that you have. Now, again, I will be explaining what is an encoder and what happens in a decoder one by one. One thing to note here is that the output of each encoder becomes the input of the next encoder, while the output of the last encoder gets fed as input to each of the six decoders, as well as the output of each decoder goes to the input of the next decoder. Now, uh, in before I discuss what happens in an encoder, let us consider the dimensions of the input and the output. Uh, as I just said, the output of one encoder becomes the input of the next encoder. So, to keep things simple, we design an encoder such that the output and input will have the same dimensions. And these dimensions are taken as capital S cross capital D, where capital S is the length of the sentence that we are aiming to translate. Here, the quick brown fox has four words, and hence capital S is 4. Meanwhile, capital D is the dimension of the embedding that we give to each to the sentence. So here, in general, we take capital D as 512. Now, each encoder is further made up of two layers. The first layer is called the multi-head self-attention layer, and the second layer is called the position-wise fully connected feed-forward network. Now, I know that's a lot of words, but again, if we discuss this and if I explain this one by one, you should get the basic gist of what happens here. Let's moving on to the self-attention layer or multi-head self-attention layer. Basically, in each self-attention layer, you will have three weight matrices called WQ, WK, and WV, where Q, K, and V refer to query, key, and value respectively. The dimensions of these weight matrices is capital D cross small d, where capital D is the same as the one we saw before, 512, and small d is 64. Uh, Now we multiply each of these weight matrices with the input. The input which was 4 cross 512, and we denote that input by x. We multiply that x with each of these weight matrices to get capital Q, capital K, and capital V. The standard matrix multiplication rules apply here. So the dimensions of Q, K, and V will be 4 cross 64. Now, after I know these operations sound very random to you, but the the final result will be something that makes a lot of sense. Uh, Now, after obtaining capital Q, capital K, and capital V, we will take the transpose of K and make this multiplication of Q times K transpose. This matrix would have a dimension of 4 cross 4 because Q is 4 cross 64 and K transpose would be 64 cross 4. After making this multiplication, we'll divide it by the root of small d, which is uh, root 64 or 8. And after taking the softmax, which would basically make the rows sum to 1, you would get a matrix like this of dimension 4 cross 4, and each cell would be referring to a word would be referring to two words, one from the row and one from the column. Now, the values in this matrix basically denote the correspondence that each word has with the other. I mean, with the column word has with the row word. So you can notice that the diagonal elements are considerably large, considering that each row should be summing to 1. And that checks out because obviously each word would be corresponding a lot to itself. And you can also see that quick and fox correspond, and that value is also considerably high, 0.2, or brown fox also correspond, and that value is 0.3. So as I said, this result basically gives you a gist of what attention is all about, and it maps the correspondence between different words in a sentence and represents that in the form of values. Now, coming back to this formula, the V matrix that we initially computed by taking X into WV, and the V matrix basically contains the embedding vector for each word in the sentence. And when we multiply this 4 cross 4 matrix with V, which is 4 cross 64, we basically incorporate the these weights of self-attention into the embedding of each word. And therefore, the embedding of quick will become something like 0.75 times quick plus 0.2 times fox. So as from this process, we are basically incorporating attention of each word into the embedding of any given word. And this is one of the beautiful aspects of a transformer, where without using any sort of sequential or recurrent process, you are telling the machine, I mean, the machine is learning how much other words correspond to any given word. And finally, this matrix that we obtained by multiplying with V would have the dimensions 4 cross 64. But wait, didn't I tell you that the input and output should have same dimensions? The input had the dimension of 4 cross 512, but here we are getting 4 cross 64. Well, we simply fix this by having 8 such self-attention layers in parallel. And after getting 8 4 cross 64 outputs, we concatenate them, all of them together, column wise, so that the number of rows stay the same, 4, but we have 64 times 8 or 512 columns. And that is how we ensure that the output and input have the same dimensions by using 8 self-attention layers in parallel. Now that we have understood the self-attention layer, the feed-forward network is pretty simple in comparison. It basically just consists of several linear and dropout layers that basically process the output of the self-attention layer in order to be used by the next encoder. So it here the basically the network, it operates upon each row parallelly, and that is why we call it the position wise feed forward network, because each row is called a position in a transformer terminology. And that is the dimensions of the matrix doesn't change here. The 4 cross 512 remains as 4 cross 512, which gets fed to the encoder. Now, if you had paid attention to the initial diagram of the transformer, you would have seen terms like positional encoding and add and normalize. I'll be explaining those terms now. Positional encoding is basically a method by which we give the translation, I mean the transformer, an idea of where the words, the position of the words in a sentence. So sorry about that. Basically, this positional encoding we before acting upon the input, we add a positional encoding matrix to the input, which gives the transformer an idea of where the position of various words in a sentence. The values in the positional encoding matrix is given by these two formulas. Uh, for this, POS basically refers to the row, and 2i or 2i plus 1 refers to the column. Basically, for even numbered columns, you will follow the sign formula, and for odd numbered columns, you'll follow the cos formula. If you plot a heat matrix of the values of the in the positional encoding matrix, you will get a pattern like this, which basically shows that this method gives a very distinct pattern which would allow the transformer to accurately determine the position of different words and the embedding. As for add and normalize, for those of you who are already know a bit about CNNs or convolutional neural networks, this is very similar to the skip level residual connections that you see in some CNN networks, which basically allow the information to travel deep into the neural networks without losing their value or without being altered. In very layman terms, you could think of it as having access to your manager's manager as well as your manager. Now that since we are done with the encoder, that leaves the decoder. Thankfully, two of the elements in the decoder are have already been explained, and they are much the same as using an encoder. What's new is the masked multi-head self-attention layer, which I'll be explaining in detail shortly. Before we move on, you may notice that for some reason we are using the which we are using the expected output as an input for the decoder, even if it's shifted a bit because of the presence of start and end tokens, meaning instead of 4 cross 512, we have 6 cross 512. So why do we do this? The reason for this is we can think of the transformer as a conditional language modeling system. So as in when when it has the English translation in numeric form from the encoder, and you give it a certain German word or a starting token, it should be able to guess the next word that comes out of it after it. For example, when it when it's already given the English language version, and you give it the start token, it should be able to predict there. And when you give it the start token plus there, then you should be able to predict Schnell. This sounds recurrent in nature, and that would be very logical if the transformer was recurrent. But the transformer is not recurrent, and another beauty of the transformer lies in the method of how it manages to learn and train itself without being recurrent in nature. And that is where the masking method comes in. And that is why we supply the output as well to the transformer. So this is what I meant when I said that if you supply one word, it should be able to predict the next word, and how logically it seems sequential. Now, when I said masking, you have to basically add a mask shape of mask matrix of this shape t cross t. Here t is 6 because it's 4 plus 2, the start token as well as the end token. And this is the matrix that we normally get in the encoder self-attention layer before applying the softmax. This is very similar to that. So now in this matrix, you can the transformer can already see can see the probabilities for the next word. For example, after Schnell, the next word could be brown, and it's say here you can see that it's brown. I mean, there's a number for brown. But that's not the point. You do not want the transformer to directly copy the next word without learning to train upon it. So this masking basically intends to hide all the subsequent words, and it does that by adding this upper triangular matrix with minus infinity in all the non-zero elements. And after doing this addition, what you get to the changed value of q into k transpose by root t, you get this, where all the subsequent words have a minus infinity value. And once you apply softmax to this, you will get zeros everywhere. And as a result of this, the transformer cannot directly see what is the next word. It has to guess that, and depending on whether it guesses right or whether it guesses wrong, it will be trained. And that's where the weights of the weight matrices will be changed. This sounds pretty neat, I know, in my opinion. So again, this is what I meant by masking. In the subsequent decoder layers, you do not need to provide any extra masking because it's already done once. And this ensures that the inputs for the the subsequent decoder layers are also masked. After that, the multi-headed attention layer works in pretty much the same way, just that there are few minor differences because we altered the output here by adding the start and end tokens. Now, the encoder that we discussed earlier, the outputs of the encoder, they are of the shape 4 cross 512, right? Uh, they are that matrix is denoted by Z, and the the decoder, the basically the output that we passed into the first decoder, that is denoted by X, because we where X is 6 cross 512. So now the dimensions of WQ, WK, and WV will be different here, clearly. And but you will make the same, and you, for finding out Q, you multiply WQ by X. But for K and V, WK and WV are multiplied by Z, the Z which is the encoder output. And again, just like in the encoder, these weight matrices will be changed during training. Uh, for the rest, well, again, the decoders also have the positional encoding at the base, and they also have the feed forward layer, same as the encoder, and they also have the add and normalize layers, which is again the same as the encoders. Finally, after the sixth decoder, the final output from that will be acted upon by a linear layer as followed by a softmax to calculate a final probability vector for the whole sentence. And this, based on the probabilities, if your model is working fine, you can guess the translation of the of the English sentence that you entered. And this pretty much sums up how a basic understanding of how a transformer works in a translation task. Thank you.
Okay, so now that was a great explanation about the transformer architecture, which is quite complicated. However, if with the Hugging Face library assisting us, we do not have to worry about all that complicated stuff. However, it is good to know the architecture, but what Hugging Face provides us is with one line of code, we can import the entire transformer architecture and use it then and there within 2 minutes. So basically, Transformers by Hugging Face provides thousands of pre-trained models to perform tasks on text such as classification, information extraction, etc. So basically, their aim is to make cutting edge NLP easier to use for everyone. So if you go and check out their website, and we'll see the coding part for this a few minutes later. These transformers can be imported and be used in one line of code. and their GitHub link is on the slides, which will be shared later. So now I'll be talking about the BERT model, which is basically stands for bidirectional encoder representations from transformers. So don't get scared by that word. Basically, what that means is for any sentence that you give into the model, what it has to do, it has to generate vectors, it has to generate numbers which the model can understand. And if it generates good numbers, then we can do good things with that. So that's basically the whole crux of NLP. You can say that's the crux of NLP as well: generate good numbers for text data. And good numbers means we can extract useful information from that. So basically, BERT is able to generate very good numbers, due to which it has immense capability to solve a large number of problems such as sentiment analysis, language translations, and question answering models. And when you go to a website, if you search for something and then you land upon a website, it Google already highlights some of the important stuff on that website. So that has been achieved using BERT. So you know how powerful is that. Even Google Translate or autocorrect, most of them were based on BERT with some few modifications. And here you can see a picture of BERT. The guy on the right side, the yellow one, is BERT, and if you see the architecture, they have used BERT's picture over there. And now, what are used for training BERT? So for pre-training BERT. So basically, we need to generate good numbers, and good numbers for the text data that you input. So to generate good numbers, it uses two techniques, namely masked language modeling and next sentence prediction. So in masked language modeling, the input sentence is given to the model. However, what is done is few of the words in the input sentence are masked. They are hidden. The model does not know what those words are. And the model's task is to predict what those words are. And depending on how it performs, the weights of the model are changed. And another is next sentence prediction. So two sentences are given. One is the input first sentence, and one is the following consequent sentence. And using the first sentence, the model has to predict the consequent sentence. And based on how it performs, again the weights are changed. So basically, by performing these two tasks, the model is able to find out how to generate representations for a given input sentence. And now this is the BERT fine tuning. Now, as I said, the model has to generate vectors for the input sentences. So basically, if you give this sentence over here, which is the input sentence, so it goes through BERT. It generates embedding matrix for the input sentence, which we can then pass through a neural network. And then finally it predicts whether the message is spam or not spam, which is this. And now if you which is with the task in our hand right now. So basically, using fine tuning of this sort, we can basically make the model better at predicting better representations for this specific task. So basically, this is known as fine tuning. So now, if you look at these two pictures, what these basically say is that BERT is basically a stack of encoder layers. The encoder layers that you just saw a few minutes ago, you just stack these encoders layers and then perform the fine tuning techniques, the two fine tuning techniques. And what you get are contextualized embeddings. So what that means is, so for example, this is a sentence: everybody dance now. For for this sentence, for each of the words, you get these vectors, which are basically representations of the word and which have hidden meanings in them, we have contextualized meaning in them. And this CLS token is basically the summary of the entire sentence in the form of a vector. So using this CLS token, we can use this CLS token as a summary of the sentence to predict whether the sentence is spam or not spam. So this is basically the power of BERT. Now Abhijit will show you a project which he made using Hugging Face and transformers, which he'll now be sharing his screen. Just a minute.
Mihir, Can you just review? I'm not able to access the share option.
Okay, just a minute.
Yeah, so
Are you able to
it,
share?
yeah, I got it. Am I audible now?
Yes, but your screen is not visible.
Yeah, I'm not shared it. Just a minute.
Yes, it's visible.
It's visible, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor, for such a comprehensive explanation of the BERT architecture. Thank you, Ashutosh, for the internal working of, for explaining the internal working of transformers. Well, knowing the internal structure is an important part, but also knowing how to implement transformer models in actual NLP projects is really important. Myself Abhijit Panda, and I'm going to explain you all a project of mine that is sentiment analysis, fine tuning with Albert. Well, Mihir very nicely explained what is BERT, that is bidirectional encoder representation from transformers. Obviously, it may seem intimidating at first, but it is really a very nice term to understand if you are really intimate in listening. So prior to transformers, we had models like RNNs and LSTMs and GRUs, which were unidirectional sequential models. That is, they used to, for example, let us take a very simple sentence. I am going to the market. So if you give the particular input example to the RNNs or GRUs, they would they would derive the context from the left to right or the right to left, but not from both. What difference came with BERT is that BERT was developed by the some scientists at Google. So they used the transformers architecture. That is, they exploited the self-attention mechanism of the transformer encoders and decoders, and using that they created BERT. But what BERT did was it not only saw the sentence, not only derived the sentence context from left to right, but also from right to left, because of which the generalization of the training examples, the generalization of the context became very easy. But it did not, it wasn't that much comprehensive for the models prior to the transformers and BERT. So what, like as Meher explained, BERT implements masked LM. So masked LM is really the most advantageous feature that BERT has over the previous NLP models. What it does is that it masks 15% of the words in a particular input example. It derives the context from both the sides, like from left to right and from right to left. And from then it inputs the unmasked words, derives the context, and from there it predicts the masked words by using softmax regression and all. So that is what was BERT. And but in this code, in this project, I used Albert. Well, Albert stands for a light BERT. So there were some disadvantages with BERT since it was a transformer model. So it was a bit big. So what is the problem with big models is that there is some disadvantage related to scaling of the data, and the model takes a bit more time to train. So a Lightbird was developed by reducing the mechanism in which the features are the parameters are calculated for the features and all. So how did they do it? Basically, the embedding matrix that is created. All of you who are acquainted with the terms are acquainted with the terms like basic terms of NLP must know what an embedding is. Anyways, I'll explain it. When an embedding is a vector that is assigned to a particular word in a sentence, such that all the word when the embedding vector of all the words are combined in layman terms, it produces a vector, and from that vector, the model derives the context. So what the embedding matrix consists of a lot of parameters, and the model and any NLP model has to basically calculate the best weights for those parameters. So what happened? How Albert is advantageous over BERT is that it splits the embedding matrix into two smaller matrices. By splitting the embedding matrix into two smaller matrices, the number of features get reduced at one go. And second thing is that it uses repeating layers split among the groups. Ashutosh spoke about the multi self-attention layers in the encoders. What Albert does is that it shares the common features among the various multi self-attention layers in the encoders of the Albert model. By using this, the scientists were able to achieve lower memory consumption and increased speed of BERT. So let me go with the code now. Basically, we what do we do here is that we do sentiment analysis on the Yelp polarity dataset. Well, the Yelp polarity dataset consists of 5,60,000 examples of textual data, each labeled into either positive comment or negative comment. So that is what sentiment analysis, whether is it a positive sentiment or a negative sentiment. One last definition about fine tuning. Those of you don't know like what fine tuning is. Basically, with the advent of transformer models, we had pre-trained models on NLP, and we used these pre-trained models to train on our custom data to do our various NLP tasks like next sentence prediction or next word prediction, sentiment analysis, position tagging, etc. So let us start with the code. First, I pip install transformers library. Like Mihir talked about it, you can write a single line of code and import the whole transformer architecture by using Python. Then pip install sentence base. Though we do not use sentence base explicitly in this code, but sentence base is a very nice tokenizer. I'll talk about tokenizer later. Pip install datasets. Datasets is a PyTorch command, and it is used to import whatever dataset you want in your code. So this is basically this code has already been run. Now in the second code box, we import TensorFlow STF. We are going to use TensorFlow as well as PyTorch architectures in this code. From TensorFlow, we import auto tokenizer. Well, those of you who are not aware of what a tokenizer is, basically in NLP task, what we do, what the model does is that it assigns a particular index to each word in a corpus. Like a corpus means a vocabulary of words. So whatever words the model sees during training, it assigns a particular index to a particular word in the whole vocabulary. So the tokenizer does the function that it just assigns indexes, and when an input example it encounters, it arranges the words in the form of tokens. For example, if the fox is jumping, so the will have a particular index, fox will have a particular index, and there will be a numeric coding of the sentence. So that is how a model recognizes a sentence, assigns embedding vectors and all. So yeah, if you go into NLP basic terms, you would obviously know about it. Now next we from datasets we import load dataset. Well, load dataset command of the datasets library is used to load your dataset. That is, for example, I've used a Yelp polarity dataset. It is very simple. You just need to look at the documentation and you're done. I would explain where this dataset gets called from. You can see that we have a GitHub. Hugging Face has a GitHub repository of datasets. It has a multiple datasets here, and when I execute this single line of code, it directly imports the Yelp polarity dataset from here. Just a minute, yeah, you can see here Yelp polarity. So whenever I execute this line of code, the dataset Yelp polarity is imported from here into my collab notebook. From now we import the tokenizer again, and since we are using the Albert base V2 model, we have to import the custom tokenizer that is available for Albert. So just a minute, yeah. So the tokenizer, every kind of transformer model has its own custom tokenizer. So here we import the this command basically imports the auto tokenizer for Albert base v2. This is the Albert base v2 card that you can access on Hugging Face. And when we go to files and versions, we can observe that we have a tokenizer.json file, and it basically imports the this tokenizer into the collab notebook. Now, since we have to tokenize our whole data set, all the examples, we define a function here. This function, what basically does is it takes away the example. When we pass an example, it takes the example. it pads it to the max length. Well, those of you who are not aware of padding, let me explain it. Padding is a process of assigning a particular input size to every text example. We know that all sentences are not of the same size. So what by giving the argument max length padding equal to max length, we make every sentence input size as similar. Our model expects every ML model expects that the input sizes have to be of constant size or shape. So by doing padding equal to max length, we manipulate each sentence example into a particular size of data. And what truncation equal to true means is that if in the future the user inputs a sentence example which is having a length which is more than max length. Max length here refers to the length of the longest training example that the model encounters. So if the input example size is more than the maximum length sentence, so some words of the input will be truncated or removed. And from in tokenized data sets, we basically map every example in the raw data sets. In the raw data set, we have the L polarity data set, and when using the tokenizer, we map every example, training example, into the tokenized function and tokenize the all the examples. And now in this code, we basically take 1,000 of the data examples. Like we create our training data set, we create our evaluation data set.
As you can see, we have coded the lines from transformers import auto model for sequence classification. Well, auto model for sequence classification is a wrapper class which we use with the Albert model. Since our task is a binary classification task, that is sentiment analysis, whether to analyze the sentiment whether it is positive or negative. So we use a sequence classification wrapper on Albert model. I can show you the yeah, just a minute. I can show you the site from where the wrapper has this. So these are various wrapper classes that are used for like these are custom wrapper classes for custom NLP tasks. Since we are using sentiment analysis, that is binary classification, we are using Albert for sequence classification. Basically, it is a wrapper and it is a PyTorch at torch.nn module. As you can see, you can refer to the site Albert and transformers. And yeah, so we basically import the Albert Waze v2 model using and with the auto model for sequence classification wrapper. As you can see, we have num labels equal to 2, which means that we have a binary classification task, that is whether to classify the sentiment as positive or negative. Basically, these are really good pre-trained models and tokenizers which come with a lot of pre-processing. You just need not explicitly code anything, which is the case with RNNs and GRUs. You need to explicitly code a lot of things, but in case of this you need not. Well, now we'll go into the training part. So you can see that I have written the code from transformers import training arguments. Basically, training arguments is a feature of the trainer API from huggingface.co. It is used to custom train custom data sets on transformer models.
This code block that you see is used for calculating our metric, that is accuracy. From data sets we import the load metric feature, and that is our metric that we are going to evaluate the data set is on evaluate the data set is accuracy. So basically we define a function compute metrics. Eval_pred basically is the prediction on a data on a data sample or input sample. So logits comma labels equal to eval_pred. Well, in logits we store the prediction that the model has given us, and in the labels we store the actual sentiment, whether it is positive or negative. And the predictions, we usually when the model gives out the prediction, it is in a matrix form. Since we have only two labels, so the matrix will be of a 2 cross 1 matrix. And we need to and there will be two values in the matrix, and both the values will be probability values. Like a positive, there will be a value of probability for the positive sentiment, and as well as same for the negative sentiment. So what np.argmax does is that it maximizes, like it sees which for which sentiment the probability is maximum in magnitude, and it stores that particular probability value, axis minus the label value. Axis equal to -1 basically means that the maximum is to be taken from the columns, and then we return the metric by comparing the predictions and the actual labels. Now comes the training part and the actual model creation. Well, from transformers, we import trainer. Trainer is another PyTorch like feature. We give arguments as our model. Our model is auto model for sequence classification. And in training arcs, I guess I missed this. This is also an important part of the code. We import training arguments from transformers. Well, training arguments is where we tell what is to be done. Like we need to test and train the data, and we need to test and train by having multiple epochs. So training arguments basically stores what are we going to do on our like data set. So we give the training arcs, then we give our training data set, the evaluation data set, as well as the metrics that we need to compute. That is the accuracy. This basically is this function that we're talking about. Now, trainer.train starts the training. We take 1,000 examples from the L polarity data. We run it for 3 epochs. The batch size is 8. And for 3 epochs, we get the following accuracy: 0.809, 0.869, 0.899. Now, next is the evaluation, like the testing and all. And in the testing, we use the same code, and in the testing, we basically get 89.9% accuracy. So this was a simple application of transformer code. Like if you create a NLP task code from the scratch, you need to do the pre-processing, you need to find an tokenizer, you need to find a vectorization layer, you need to code a lot of things. But by using transformers, the code is really minimized, and you just need very less code in order to train your model. You don't even need to write the code for your model. You just import the model, like I've imported for auto model for sequence classification. It implements transform architecture, which is one of the which is perhaps the best NLP architecture that so far we have in the field of NLP, and you're done, like whatever task you want to do. Yeah, thank you. I'm done with it. Please shoot out your questions in the form if you have any. I would love to answer.
Thank you. That was a great explanation that showed how easy it is using Hugging Face to implement such a complicated task. So now, as we have rolled out the form for filling any questions, you are please welcome to fill these questions, and we'll be sure to address these questions and reply to you as soon as possible. So I think this is the end of the workshop, and thank you for attending it. And I'm sure you learned a lot from this.